Hello and welcome to our next module. In this module, in the next one, we'll be reviewing the two opposition sides of the ratification of the Constitution. First, we'll be reviewing the Anti-Federalists. These are the folks who did not like the Constitution, did not want it. And so let's go ahead and get started. First of all, the leader of the Anti-Federalists was George Mason. Okay, I always kind of say important enough they named the university after him. Made the Final Four some odd years ago. Now, when it came to the Anti-Federalists, they were at a disadvantage. They could only offer opposition. They did not give an alternative plan. So let's talk about this for a minute. Now, you know, have you ever been around someone or you've been working on a problem and you couldn't hard enough to crack, and uh, someone looked over your shoulder and said, "That's not going to work," and you just say, "Well, what will you do?" "I don't know, but that's not going to work." They just walk away. It might be very sound words, but it wasn't exactly helpful, right? So to kind of reset here, reset the stage, everything, whole society under the Articles of Confederation was crumbling, right? And so when it came to the Anti-Federalists, and you look at their positions, they had some strong criticisms of the Constitution, but they gave no alternative, none. And when it came to the Anti-Federalists, I will tell you, a lot of the dialogue between the Federalists, and we'll talk about the we'll talk about the Federalists in the next module, but a lot of the dialogue between the two was via essays that were published, right? The main essay written for the Anti-Federalists was Brutus. If you read through that, all of their criticisms were spot on. You have to remember that at this point in time, society was operating under a confederacy. Each state had its own sovereignty. So in Brutus, they kept talking about, well, the ability to tax, the ability to have national courts will really take away uh, the value, the power of the state court systems, and that any thoughts of confederacy are gone. They were right. Here in the current day and age, you really can't argue with that. But at the time, again, no matter how good their criticisms were, they gave no alternative plan for people to consider. All right. Now, one thing that they really had a beef with the Constitution is they believed that the citizens' rights were in jeopardy. There was no Bill of Rights. All right. Now we know the Bill of Rights, first 10 amendments to the Constitution, and in many respects, it protects individual rights. Well, you have to understand too that it was a tradition in all the states under colonial rule, under British rule, to have a Bill of Rights. Under British rule, you had the Bill of Rights of 1689 passed by Parliament. Each of the constitutions of the individual colonies had a Bill of Rights in it. They were used to this tradition. Now, this was something that the Anti-Federalists really had a problem with. Now, let me give the other side of this. The framers of the Constitution, it wasn't that they were trying to take away rights of citizens. They had just as much concern about individual rights. Their position was, well, hold it. If we come up with a list of rights and we leave one out that we really think people should have, when we left it out, then unknowingly we've taken a right away from someone. All right. So it's not like either side, one side was trying to pull a fast one. No, they both had the same goal in mind. They just had a different philosophical approach to it. But again, everybody had an experience with a set Bill of Rights. Now, lastly, this last point about the Anti-Federalists, uh, we talk about conventional wisdom, rule of thumb, things like that. At the time, it was conventional wisdom that for democracy to thrive, it needed to be decentralized. So the Anti-Federalists believed a strong central government could not govern such a wide geographical area on the eastern coast of what is now the United States on the Atlantic, the 13 states. Now, if we had trouble getting all the delegates to Philadelphia because of rain, well, how in the world would you know in the nation's capital what's happening in Charleston, South Carolina on any given day. That's where the conventional wisdom was that you leave those issues decentralized to be managed locally, which kind of gets back to that whole tradition of a confederacy. You might have a national government, but South Carolina can better govern all of its issues locally. Uh, Rhode Island the same, New York the same, and so on. So they believed that when you had this centralized authority, no telephones, television, internet, no nothing, that rule would be arbitrary and impersonal, right? And to some degree, you might have some of the similar problems that you had under British rule when they had to defer back to England, even though they might have to send emissaries back over to England on a boat to get messages and rulings on certain things and wait for them to come back to provide direction. So again, that was the last criticism here of the Anti-Federalists of the Constitution. But just remember too, back to that second bullet point, as I read it, even though their criticisms were very strong, they had no alternative. They had no other thing to consider in place of the Constitution that was in front of everyone for ratification. All right. With that, that's the end of this module, and we'll pick it up with the next one with the Federalists.